following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, and across the moat from Oakland. I'm blessed again. I talk to the most interesting people on the planet. And my good buddy Jerry Feitelberg is here. My new buddy, Mitch, and I'm pronouncing Belacone. How's that?
Belacone, no T.
Belacone. Oh, okay. And I guess I got it half right. I got the Bella right.
Yeah, close enough. It translates to white horse from Russian.
Oh, okay. It sounded Italian to me. How I knew it wasn't, though. I'm good at that. Jerry Feitelberg, what does your name translate to?
Well, I looked for translations from it, and one version has it as Fiddle Mountain, and I thought that was it. And then I did some research on Jewish genealogy, and I found that it's possible that the Vital came from the Italian for life, Vitale, Vital or Vitali, and that those people from Italy may have migrated north to Eastern Europe. Who knows?
Well, I'm a Tikachinsky by birth, and my father had it shortened to Tyko without consulting anybody. One day he just came home. We are Tykos. I was in kindergarten, and what can I say? Tikachinsk was, or maybe still is, a town in Poland, and I guess Tikachinsky meant that we're from that town. We're the Tikachinskys of Poland. It doesn't do me well in Alameda, particularly. But
Jerry, when you researched your genealogy and looked into Jewish genealogy, you didn't happen. There's a book by I forget his first name, by Kurzweil on Jewish genealogy. You wouldn't have happened to have looked into that book, would you have?
No.
Okay.
No. What I did is I searched. My grandparents came from Latvia, from Jelgava, Latvia, which is about 25 miles from Riga.
Uh-huh.
And I was able to go back to 1865, and I found my great-grandfather. But I couldn't find any siblings. And my grandmother's name was easy. Her English name was Sarah Weiss. She was Zara Weiss. And so that was, there were a lot of Weisses, so that was a little harder to track back her genealogy. And they came here to the United States around 1891 or 1892. They were very young when they got here. And he has siblings, but I can't connect on them. I can't connect the dots. Kind of hard.
Jerry, did they escape the pogroms as did my grandparents?
Probably. Jelgava in the province of Kurland in Latvia suffered terribly during World War II. Whoever the people that were left were all massacred by the Nazis. Just virtually wiped out.
Okay. Hey, a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you guys about. First of all, Mitchell, your book on Jose, I think you call him, Joe Namath.
Broadway Jose.
Broadway Jose.
And the book details, the preface details my move from New York City, the Upper West Side, to Buenos Aires, some of the cultural differences. And then the book itself is me as a 50-year-old going to a football game in Buenos Aires, tackle football game, and it was their second year of playing. Actually, the game that I went to was the first year they were organized as a league into 5 teams, and I thought, they were disorganized and terrible. They were playing a game against Panama, and they got slaughtered. And I said, I could help these people, so I joined the league. They couldn't believe my age. They thought I wanted to be a coach. I bought a pair of soccer cleats down here and joined up. And then the book itself is my experiences in playing in Argentina, and again with the cultural differences and how things work out. So that's the book.
What is your level of skill? Did you play high school football, college football?
No, I played high school basketball, and I played 1 year of college basketball. And football was always my first love. And back in the mid-'60s in New York Central Park, you could always find a pickup game. This was before they protected the park, with every last blade of grass there is treated like gold now. But in those days, there was all these like sandlot games that I'd go and play with my brother. So my level of skill in Buenos Aires, I would compare myself to Joe Namath. In the United States, I would be junior varsity. It's a big difference. So, it's a fun. I'll just say one more thing on it. Unless asked, all that I listened to and watching TV and coming off the couch to play, I was amazed how so many things were instinctive that had been drilled into my head by all the journalists and TV announcers over the years. So in most situations, I would know what to do, what to say in the huddle. All the things that I heard from the announcers for all those years that I've been watching just automatically came to me.
And you were very lucky, as I was, growing up in New York. We had some terrific football announcers. All sports. We're blessed growing up.
Aldi Rogatis, do you remember that?
I would have expected you to remember him because you're, 50 at this point? I'm 72.
I'm 63.
Okay. So we're closer in age. Then, yes, he was by far the most articulate, succinct, and informative color announcers.
That was him. Yep.
He was just terrific, and if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the first color announcers. He was partnered with Marty Glickman for a while. He was just terrific, Al Dero. And
did he work with Chris Schenkel? I remember Schenkel did the Giants games.
I don't remember that. I was mostly a radio guy in those days. The coach of my day was right after Jim Lee Howell and his staff of Hall of Famers. He had the Green Bay coach.
Vince Lombardi. Yeah.
Vince Lombardi. He had the Dallas coach.
Tom Landry.
Yeah.
That was Sherman, wasn't it?
Pardon me?
Wasn't it Sherman?
Al Sherman came after Jim Lee Howell. And you were up in Boston. How did you come by that knowledge?
Well, that's a good question because in the 50s there were no Boston Patriots, no New England Patriots, and we would get all the home and away games of the Giants. We were all New York Giants fans up in New England. So we watched all. In those days, they played 12 games, so we knew all the Giants players. We listened to all the. Wouldn't miss the Giants for the world.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. Gives us something else to talk about because those Frank Gifford teams, Charlie Connerly, Kyle Rote,
with Cat
say
Cabbage,
nothing
Modulewski.
of
Cat
Greer.
Cabbage, Modulewski, Rosie Greer, Rosie Brown.
Tucker Fredrickson came a little later, I think, mid-'60s.
Yes, indeed. He just about the time I was leaving New York in '65 for the Air Force, and got to spend the rest of my life in California. But and Alex Webster was the coach about that time, and they were kind of on a downhill run. I'll tell you, I'm from Queens, and the Jets came in, and I was equally as fervent about the Jets as I had been about the Giants. There was just
they weren't the Jets in those days, Ralph. They were the Titans,
and played at the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, Harry Wisner
first
was
2
one of
years.
the owners, if you remember. Yeah, Harry Wisner was an owner, and then they became the Jets around 1963 or somewhere in there.
I think it was when they went to Shea Stadium. They became the Jets.
Right. So, quick point: there was a journalist. I'll do it as a guess. There was a journalist who, in his 40s, would challenge every Giant receiver or the fastest Giants to a 40 and 100-yard dash, and he would beat him every time into his 40s. Do you know who that journalist was?
No.
Marty Glickman.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, Marty Glickman.
He was a track star. You know,
right.
He was, and he's got a great story. Had a great story. Rest in peace, Marty Glickman. He was an Olympian, and he was asked not to compete. He made the Olympics because it was the Jesse Owens years, and we didn't want to embarrass Hitler.
It was Avery Brundage was behind that, supposedly.
Right?
Was
one of the
Nazi
biggest
lover there.
anti-Semitic persons on the face of the earth.
And I think there was another Jewish athlete too, Ralph. I think there were two Jewish athletes.
I always forget his name. They were on a relay team, and his life didn't turn out as well. He was very embittered by it, by the experience. Marty goes on.
And there was another athlete besides Jesse Owens. They wrote a book about. It was Ernie Zamperini from Torrance, California, who became the subject of the book Unbroken, who flew, who was an athlete who competed in the Olympics, and during World War II, his plane crashed, and he and his co-pilot survived 42 days on a raft out in the Pacific. It was a great story. It's a great book. It was written by.
Do you remember the name of the book? I'll pick that up.
I think it was Unbroken.
Unbroken. Okay, you mentioned that, yeah.
Ernie Zamperini. It was written by Laura Hillenbrand, who wrote Seabiscuit. Same book, same author.
Yeah. And you mentioned the name Hillenbrand. The Giants of those years had a linebacker named Hillenbrand. To show you just how little is in my brain that that I can make room for that kind of minutia. It's wonderful.
No, I'm having to spin. I'm sorry, Jerry. Go ahead.
So the Giants of the 50s, perhaps the greatest game played at that time for the NFL championship, was the one played between the Baltimore Colts and the New York Giants in 1958. And Alan Amici scored the touchdown in overtime. That was a thriller. And that was a classic game.
He ran through a hole that my grandmother could have gotten through.
But I think Charlie Connolly was the quarterback for the Giants. That they didn't get Y.A. Tittle till 1961, I think.
Right.
Yeah. But Frank.
And they got guys like Bill Schaffner to replace Kyle Rote and Gifford. They remained terrific for a long time.
And didn't they have a receiver by the name of Schnelker? Does that ring a bell?
Yes, he was a tight end.
Yeah.
wow, you have an incredible memory, Jerry. We're going back,
Thank you, sir.
Knowing how much I know how much you know in baseball, and you have a memory for football too, as well as the Celtics. You have a terrific recall about that.
Well, that was my brother was a huge Celtic fan. He loved them. I think I told you the story in 1962. The Celtics were playing the Lakers, and it went to a game 7. And in those days, you know, they didn't sell out the arena. The Celtics were not the big team. It was the Boston Bruins that drew all the people. I was at the Boston Garden at 6 in the morning to stand. I was about 10th in line, and they would sell you 4 tickets, because my brother wanted to go to Game 7, and it wasn't being televised. So the only way you could see the game was to buy a ticket. So I went there, and I'm standing in the line. Guy comes up, and he says, "How many tickets you buy?" I said, "I'm buying 2." He says, "Well, buy the 2 extra for me, and I'll give you $20." Hey, you know, $20 in 1962 was big money.
Yeah.
So I bought the tickets. I come home. They announced the game was going to be on TV. And it was on the first night of Passover. And my mother, we went to the game. My brother and I went to the game. My mother didn't talk to us for 2 weeks.
Were those days they wouldn't, what was the deal? They wouldn't put it on television unless they sold out, because it was, I guess it was to protect the live gate. Am I guessing correctly?
Yeah. And then when they sold out, they said, "Okay, we'll put it on TV." But you didn't know if it was going to sell out, so you ran the risk. And the Celtics won that night.
My question of you, Jerry, those 2 weeks where your mother wasn't talking to you, was it just a little peaceful at times? I know it would be if I had the pleasure of my mother being quiet for 2 weeks.
No, she didn't stay mad at us. It was okay.
Oh, good.
She got over it.
Yeah,
but it was. We went to several Game 7s in Boston, as I recall, against the Lakers, and of course the Celtics won them all. It was a wonderful franchise.
They won them even after Chamberlain came over. What year did Chamberlain came from the 76ers to L.A., but that was much later, no?
Right.
What year?
I think started playing in 62. In 62, he had the 100-point night against the Knicks in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So he had
But that was as a Warrior, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. He had a. I saw the first. I went to the game that Russell and Chamberlain, the first game that they played, but I don't remember what year it was. May have been 1960, somewhere in there, 61.
Yeah. Hey, we do a show on this network called How About Show from Nedick's at the Old Garden. We don't do it from there, but we talk about those days. And I can remember when half the NBA, it was 8 teams, 10 players on a team in those days, and half the NBA was playing a doubleheader at Madison Square Garden. So for a kid like me who loved autographs and going down and mingling with these guys, it was terrific. I have some wonderful memories.
Yeah, I remember those doubleheader days. They were great. They had them at Boston Garden all the time.
I know I was there, but I can't remember. I imagine you guys remember the old Madison Square Garden.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we spent a lot of time there as kids. They had a program in school. You had what was called a GO card, General Organization, and they gave the cards out. You had to buy them. I think it was $1 a month. You'd get on the bus free. But with the GO card, you get to sit in the balcony for 75 cents. And in those days, as kids, that was a nice bargain. So got to see a lot of games up in that balcony, and I was also blessed, and still am, with the friendship of Marty Rose from this network. He does the Met shows. His uncle was a sports writer with AP, and he would get tickets. They papered the building, basically, and he'd get us tickets right behind the benches, right. It was just terrific tickets that we got from Murray Rose, terrific sports writer, was a boxing writer, covered the Olympics, and the Rose family is almost directly responsible for my having this sports fanaticism. So we could blame them or credit them. I don't know. Life of sports, I'm going to credit them because it's fun being in the candy store of life, and that's what sports are. And I get to talk a lot of sports with folks like you, but you're not all sports. Both of you are not all sports. So I'm going to give you the question that I've been asking my guests for the past 2 weeks. How do you see the end game playing out for Trump? Because
first of all, let me state I will not accept, even if asked, to become chief of staff. Is that what you want?
Well, I was going to ask on his behalf, but if anybody on his behalf, you'd want to shoot him in the face. He is a bad. I didn't mean that literally. He is a bad human being. Let me tell you. And today it comes down that his inauguration was was funding money illegally, and there's criminal charges being brought to light against his organization. And there's one other thing that came down today. I think it had to do with the National Enquirer. And
yes, it said he was in the room. He was in the room with David Peck and Michael Cohen, when the payoffs were being discussed to Karen McDougal.
Yeah, it's basically checkmate. But again, my question to both of you, let me start with you, Mitchell. How do you see this coming down?
Well, what I fear is his presidential powers will keep him safe while he's in office. That's kind of my fear, and if I had to guess, that's what I think will happen. Is he crooked? He's been crooked. Any New Yorker that's been following in the papers knows that he's a flim-flam guy, and I wish it would. I wish it would end sooner than later, but I don't think it will.
Okay. Do you think he can muster enough time to come back from all of this with indictments hanging over his head and present a case to the country for re-election? Because if that's the case, I'm really scared. It's terrible.
Well, I think that when the Democrats take over the House, that they have a responsibility to finish the House Intelligence Committee's work on it. And now that they have more information as to what's going on, and the other committees, Jerry Nadler's committee as well as Adam Schiff's, and they can get more information and more corroboration, and they can build a strong case for impeachment. Now, just because the Republicans will not necessarily vote him out, I still think if they have enough grounds for impeachment to go ahead with it, then they will have the trial and everything will come to light. And maybe the Republicans, may see that light at the end of the tunnel and say that we have to get rid of him rather than wait for the election in 2020. And the other thing, too, is it's possible that the Southern District of New York, that branch of the Justice Department, might indict him. They have enough. They've got corroborating witnesses, and he was guilty of 2 felonies involved in the hush money payoffs. So they may indict him, because if they wait, and he should get reelected, what is it? The
statute of limitations.
Statute of limitations will kick in, and he wouldn't have to pay for his crimes. But we discussed this yesterday, and anyone that knows, Trump is from Queens. He's a builder. He was dealing with concrete and all the stuff in the building trades, and he had to have. It's only conjecture on my part. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have any proof other than saying it's pure speculation. But he had to deal with the mob guys in Brooklyn and Queens over the years and in New York in order to get anything built. And so in his behavior is that of a mob boss. Just do what I tell you to do. That's it, period. I don't care about the ramifications.
My next question, I guess, how did a guy like that get elected? What was it that were the Democrats and the system, was it so bad that,
Nope. The system is, with the Electoral College, there are 20 states that have less population than California. California's got 40 million people. So you add up all those 20 states, they have less population than California. They got 40 senators and 40 electoral votes compared to California's 2.
Yeah, and what you're saying is you add them all up together, they have...
less than the 40 million in California. So California is getting the short end of the stick. And also, California is sent... Yeah, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I'm sorry, Jerry, I interrupted.
No, that's okay. No problem.
From another perspective, yeah, of course I agree with you. He lost the general election. But who I find most responsible for him getting elected, I'd put the blame on Anderson Cooper and the like, and the liberal corporate media. They knew what they're complicit in it. They knew what they were doing. He sold advertising. During the campaign, they kept the camera on him nonstop. Any other Republican had to play second fiddle to him because he was the clown act that sold advertising time. So they kept him front and center, and whatever his appeal was, got more advertising than anybody else. And they had to know what they were doing, but that's just how they work. He was the spectacle.
How much
that's
do
a
you
good
think Deborah Wasserman Schultz basically fixing the primaries?
That's another story.
That didn't help.
Yeah, I would strongly agree there.
I think Bernie would have kicked his ass.
I'm not sure about that. But I think Bernie would have held his own pretty well with Trump in the debates. It would have been interesting.
Right, which basically I think that helped contribute to Clinton's demise. She just sat there, and he is a big, intimidating, goofy guy walking around the stage.
I think she could have cleaned up the election at the debates, even though he came off pretty ignorant in a few of them. I think she could have cleaned up. When he got off his stool and started coming on the stage when she was speaking, all she had to do was walk over to that guy, scream at him, "Get back in your chair, son. This is my time to speak." Do you remember the part where he would jump around backstage in the background? That should not have been...
Basically stalk her on stage.
That's where she had to make the stand right there and make a dramatic show, but didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, also her campaign was poorly run. I don't know who ran her campaign, she just did not come off as warm and fuzzy. People just couldn't connect with her. And a lot of people like the reality stuff of this guy yelling and screaming, we're going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to build a wall, I'm going to bring coal back, I'm going to drain the swamp. Not only, he didn't drain the swamp, he filled it up and brought it to
the swamp.
Yeah.
He's the epitome of the swamp.
What kills me is the mentality that somebody could bring back coal. I mean, what goes through, what he's trying to bring back 50s America in people's imaginations? I mean, how absolutely stupid can you be to want to work backwards with pollution and
more pollutants in the air than were before Obama and his wonderful program to take care of the ecology a little bit and reverse what we were going. And this guy's taking all that back and more.
Let me go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, everyone wants to know what air pollution was like. We had the big camp fire up here in Paradise, California. The smoke came down and hovered over San Francisco for 2 weeks, Ralph?
Oh, yeah, it was horrible.
People couldn't breathe. The air quality was so poor. They canceled the Stanford Cal game because of the amount of particulate was about 200, and normal is 15 or 20. People were wearing face masks throughout. It was just terrible, and so that's what happens when you have air pollution. I remember years ago in coal country, Donora, Pennsylvania, they had an air inversion, and it was one of the first times it happened, and people choked to death from this. And all the miners with black lung disease and all that stuff, they're not. It's unbelievable that they want to go into coal. Yeah, coal for the most part is passé. It's a dirty fuel, and they will tell you they can make it clean, which is a lie. They can't. There's just too much sulfur and crap in it. They'll never get it clean. So the Republicans stacked the deck when solar energy back before Reagan. We were really we were the world's leader because there wasn't much of it being done, but it was going great guns. It made sense and people were loving it. Reagan came into office and wiped it out in one day. He killed all the subsidies to it and just killed every solar company was out there. And you follow the trail of the money, and that's what happens. Yeah. And that seems to be the road Trump's taking. That route. He could care less as far. I don't think he not only could he care less. I don't think he knows enough, has enough vision to understand that it doesn't make sense to keep going down this path. That where you're some European countries, even South American countries, are so close to being where they can survive with just wind and solar and geothermal.
Right.
Well, a lot of them are using nuclear too. But
tell me about Buenos Aires. Yeah. Tell me about Buenos Aires, where you are. Are they progressive that way, Mitch?
Well, Argentina is a whole nother can of worms. You have corruption from top to bottom, and you talk about indicting Trump. There was I just blanked on because I blank on names. They had a president that, while he was in office, was convicted of gun running. Carlos Menem, stayed in office and convicted of gun running. They accept stealing here. They don't. Whereas Cristina Fernandez, the last president, and her husband before her, they had vaults. They built a house in the South because he liked cash. So the whole house was loaded up with dollars they stole. They got caught. A journalist snagged one of their accountants and on a camera, and he was saying, the money we stole, we didn't have enough manpower and machinery to count it, so we would just fill suitcases and weigh it, and then it would either go to Bolivia or some other South American country before it went to Switzerland or wherever, or buried in the ground somewhere. But these people accept it. That's what they know. That's why this is a country rich in resources you could barely describe. You can grow anything anywhere. It's the 7th largest landmass in the world. The Europeans came and built schools, beautiful infrastructure of schools, universities. Everything was laid out, but once Peronism came in and destroyed all the economy and the democracy was here, corruption came in, and they've never been able to break that cycle. This is why this country buries itself every 10 years to 15 years. They blow up. They're the world's leading deadbeat. You know, it's just a whole. There's things you can complain about in the United States. The good news is they're warm and friendly. The bad news is other outsiders can't do business here because they just leave.
The good news is most of the Nazis are dead by now.
Yeah. Yeah, there. When we didn't. Our driver in Santiago, Chile, we stopped in Valparaiso. The ship stopped there. After we went from Buenos Aires over to Santiago. But when we were in Buenos Aires, I was impressed how wide the streets were. Our friends went to the opera house. They said it was a magnificent opera house. It was a beautiful
Teatro Colón.
Yeah. And we went over to the La Boca section where there was a big soccer stadium over there. And they had a street with shops. They had tango dancing, and and then they took us to a lunch. We had some Argentinian beef for lunch, and it was very, very lovely lunch. But driving through the square, there was some activity at that time. From there we were going out to the Falkland Islands, and there was some activity in the square. There was some speakers going on that they wanted to get the Falklands back to Argentina, which is not going to happen. And
no.
Ralph, I'm telling you, it was their summertime. We went up to the Falklands. The temperature that day was 48 degrees in the summertime. And you have to tender in. You get in there, and maybe 3,000 people live on the island, on the Falklands. And it's the biggest rock pile you ever want to see in your life. And you say, why the hell would anybody want this pile of rocks?
Politics.
Well, they discovered oil. There's oil off the coast somewhere. We saw a big rig being towed out there. Yeah, and it's politics. They just want it back. And we went out
Go
to
ahead.
see the penguins. We went out to see the penguins. 2-hour drive to the penguins, and it was fun. It was kind of nice.
The Falklands, give you an idea, originally, England didn't want it. They were divesting of themselves of all these old colonies because all they were doing was costing money. Nobody wanted it. They recently had a vote in the Falklands because Argentine politicians still make a fuss about it to gain votes. It's ours. We deserve it. So they had a vote on the Falklands, and literally, out of 2,000, I think there was 2,000 islanders that voted. There was one vote to be associated with Argentina. One vote. But that doesn't stop the people. So when Britain was trying to get rid of it, nobody really cared about it. Then along came Galtieri, who thought he could make a little political power by starting a war. So he started a war they were completely unprepared for. Britain blew him out of the water. Argentina, in all its combined mental powers, thought the United States would come to help them because they were part of America against Britain. The best headline that I ever read, Galtieri was the president that got him into that war. When he died, the headline was, Galtieri dies, nobody cries but Johnny Walker. He was a drunk. And so then even after that, they kept the pressure up, and Britain told the original Kirchner, and he said, hey, listen, look, there's oil here, we'll just split it with you. We'll split the revenues, and, they didn't want to make a big deal. There's oil, but it wasn't, at that time that big a deal. And Kirchner's response, why should we why should we share what's ours, what's rightfully ours? So they get nothing. So
yeah, exactly.
But that's
cutting
the
your nose off to spite your face.
Populist. A populist opinion. Another thing, if I can go back to what you were saying about how they lost the election, getting away from Argentina. I'll take a little vacation. A little part of me, when the Democrats lost, a little part of me, when the liberals lost, was happy, and I'll tell you why. I grew up on the hotbed of liberalism in New York, the Upper West Side, in one of the most liberal cities in the most liberal neighborhood. And I was in third grade. I can't guess the grade, but it was 1960. The election, I guess it was 64. So I was 9 years old, and Johnson was running against Goldwater. And there was all the posters had Goldwater blowing up the world, the Arizona senator with pictures of nukes going off and this and that. And we had a mock election in our class. And being a little bit of a class clown, I raised my hand for Goldwater. And, just because everybody did it for I guess it was Johnson, I raised my hand for Goldwater. I can't describe to you. People were calling my parents, screaming at my parents, how could you? It was a scandal. I was humiliated. Let me give you humiliated, and I couldn't even tell them that I was joking. It was such a big to-do in that circle. 30-something years later, I was in Central Park, and I ran into a boyhood friend who said, his son is over in Czech Republic, and he's coming back, who was my buddy, and I had dinner at his house. I guess I was in my 40s, and the parents were patronizing me. They were saying, the teacher said, Mitch wasn't the only one that voted for Goldwater. I did too. They were trying to make me feel better in my 40s about it. So, there's a little part of me that said, sometimes the Democrats take it a little too far. They're not completely without blame with the over the top politicking.
No, you're absolutely correct.
Great illustration of it.
Bernie Sanders wanted to have free health care, free college, and free everything for people, and the liberals buy into that, but someone's got to pay for it. And I was a businessman. I had my own business. I had to make payroll. I had to pay all my bills before I could pay myself. And if I ran into financial difficulty, I had to work harder, which I did. And I had people working for me. I had to let them go. I had to work 2-3 shifts in order to make it go. But I still believe that this country, has a place for to lean slightly to the left and to champion things like equal justice, equal opportunity. Not that we're not going to prop you up, but we're going to give you the opportunity to make something of yourself. But you've got to do it. You got to believe in yourself. You got to solve your own problems, that type of thing. So on one side, I give you my conservative side, then I give you my liberal side.
Well,
right.
I don't think Trump. I think he changes the whole equation of liberal and conservative. He's just so far out there, and his compassion for people and for the kids that were separated from their parents really says it all. So whatever he's doing to the mindset of this country, it ain't good.
I don't get him.
What does it say about the right wing? What does it say about the right wing and the Christians? Being
the
Jewish,
evangelistic crowd.
We believe in equality and tolerance because it's good for us. Because we were victims of inquisitions and persecutions for a couple thousand years, and we want to just be able to practice what we believe in and leave us alone. These people want to say it's our way or the highway.
I don't get Trump.
Yeah, he's not an ultra right winger in terms of religion. He doesn't go to church, but he bought into that, and he sold these people that he was one of them, so he got their support.
The deal, just like you were saying, Ralph. I don't get Trump. When they're separating the babies from the parents, all he has to say is, "Look, this is a horrible situation. It's not something I wanted to do, but I'm protecting the laws of the country." But he doesn't take it from that perspective. He brags about it like, who cares? They're criminals. They're 400 have criminal records. He just goes completely, follows the script that he always follows, on the attack. There's no sympathy to the guy, period.
If you go back to Charlottesville, remember he said there were good people on both sides? And that was...
when I think of what he's done, how can you top some of this stuff? That was right up there. A woman got killed that day.
A woman got killed, but then he read a script a couple of days later, and you could tell it was written by someone else. And then 2 days later, he goes back to his original thoughts. And you notice he's like a pit bull. He won't give up the idea of building the wall.
He was that way with the Supreme Court justice. He really showed, one day he showed compassion for the woman who testified.
Right. And then 2 days later he mocked her.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He's a mental. He has all the qualifications.
He's a narcissist. I sometimes marvel at how he can take all the abuse that he takes and all the pressure that he's under. I don't even think he feels it. I just think he thinks it's all politics. They're out to get me, and he's been that way all his life. With judges, lawyers not paying taxes and fighting the system. And he's above it all in one sense. Admire would be the wrong word, but I marvel at it. How could a guy do all these idiotic things and still think he's right and still defend it? But he seems to have a knack for it.
I think he's feeling the pressure at this point.
I loved it the other day when he said, "Why would they want to impeach me? The economy's great. Look at the great economy." And that's when the stock market went down 800 points. So what can I tell you?
Right. And look at the debt.
And the debt
that we were.
And wait until the people pay their taxes on April 15th this year, and they find out all the good tax deductions they had in California, New York, and Florida, and these wealthy states. They ain't going to have them anymore. They're going to have to pay a lot more in taxes. And McConnell has come out and said, well, we got this $1 trillion debt. The only way we can make it pay is to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, rather than saying, hey, the tax cuts were wrong. It didn't create the jobs that you were thinking it was going to do, and the revenue is
how about
there.
stopping war, for Christ's sake? You know the price of war, and I've been saying this for 50, 60 years, since Vietnam. That is where the cutting needs. You need to cut. We've got enough weapons, and we don't have to be materialistic. And we can go for that one world concept.
Well, don't you think we're the biggest arms dealer in the world? That the reason we're developing these arms is to sell them to other countries?
Exactly, and I think that's what's behind Saudi Arabia and his idiotic decision to not sanction them or come off as the bad guy or whatever. It's because they buy a lot of arms.
Yeah, they're going to buy $100 billion worth or whatever. And,
he said it flat out. He said, "Well, I can't stop business with them for when it first happened." He just said it. We got too much money on the table to kill that business for that little incident.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that little just a human being who's a journalist, and he doesn't like journalists anyway.
Well, I know those weren't his words, that little incident. I threw that in there, but that was my interpretation of it.
But, maybe he did, or maybe the prince knew, and maybe he didn't know. Just saying that when the CIA gave him a report that says, we are sure this guy was in on it. Nothing happens in Saudi Arabia without his knowledge.
Well, his son-in-law is helping them to figure out their way past it. Was it Jared?
Yeah. Yeah, and the Saudis may be bankrolling him, too. Who knows?
Oh, that'll come out, too. Once they get him to file his taxes, we'll see where all the money is coming from.
Yeah, that's another thing that the Congress can do. In January, they can subpoena his tax records. They couldn't do it now because the Republicans wouldn't do it, but the Dems.
Ooh, very good. Something to look forward to. Hey, guys, great show. Thank you. I enjoyed introducing you to each other.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure talking to you and listening to you, Jerry. I learned.
Yeah,
Mitchell,
I learned
I hope
the time from this man. Yeah,
Mitchell, I hope
Jerry.
that if you come to San Francisco, Ralph, nice little restaurant that we go to in Alameda, right, Ralph?
Absolutely.
Nation's Giant Burgers. We had lunch yesterday. 2 Jewish guys, 2 Italian guys, and we had a wonderful, wonderful day. We talked about.
It was a the cholesterol lunch.
Yeah. We talked about the Yankees. This one fellow that I brought was when I had my business, he was a customer of mine, and when he was a caddy, he grew up in where he was from Long Island somewhere, and he used to caddy for Whitey Ford, the pitcher. And
he told a great story about Whitey had a little crush on his mom, who would have nothing to do with him because she was married.
Because he was married. And then,
so it didn't stop our it wouldn't stop our president.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And then we had the very knowledgeable gentleman, Michael Duca, who works for ESPN. His wife works for the San Francisco Giants. They have 2 championships rings. She started working after the 2010 season. And Michael wore his 2014 ring to the game, to the lunch yesterday. And Michael wrote a book with a guy by the name of Turbo, and it was The Unwritten Rules of Baseball. A very interesting book if you want to look it up. Michael Duca.
We're lucky on Comfortably Zoned. Jerry's a regular, Michael's a regular, and Mitch, you're becoming a regular. So,
thanks.
Eat a lot of bran.
Thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, well, the neat thing about the internet today is you can get all the results from New York. You can read the paper. I read the New York Times online every morning to see what's going on, and you can do that in Argentina. And
I do it.
It's really, you keep in touch with the world, and it's really wonderful. It's a wonderful thing. When we were on the cruise, when we were on the cruise, you get a paper at the end of the day, gives you dribs and drabs, and they never used to give you free internet, but now they've become enlightened, or at least on the cruises that we went on, you get the full internet, so you can keep in touch with everybody. It's not too bad anymore.
Right. Jerry, if you go online and look up Broadway Jose, Mitchell Belacone, you can read the preface for free, and that'll give you my take on New York and my take on Buenos Aires.
Okay, is that on Amazon?
It's mostly written for comedy.
Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon. So once you get past my angst in the first couple pages, it's comedy.
Okay, I'll download it. Not bad.
All right.
I like to do that.
Hey,
great talk.
Thank you again. Thank you for listening. This has been a terrific show. We'll do it again real soon, guys.
Okay. Thanks for having me, Ralph.
All right. Thank you,
great.
Mitchell.
Enjoyed it immensely.
Mitchell Belacone and Jerry Feitelberg made for
Okay. Watch out, you guys. I might take you up on my next trip to the States. I might take you up on the hamburgers.
Literally the best hamburgers in California, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It wasn't like some of the burgers now come around. What are they, around $20 a burger? And answer place. This, I think it was about $8 a burger, something like that. It wasn't
Something
too
like
bad.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can bring some Argentinian beef. That's really good.
Yeah, no, I'll eat a burger in the States, but I don't bother with, pardon the arrogance, but I won't bother with a steak in the United States. I'll eat fish and chicken because there's no comparison.
Well, we were in Santiago. We stopped at a little restaurant, and I ordered the steak for lunch. It was out of this world. Unbelievable.
Well, the country's not near as populated. Like I said, it's the 7th largest landmass. So they can let the cows mow the lawn without making a high-priced fuss about it. So in other words, everything's grass-fed beef, and it's no big deal to them. That's what they're used to.
Yeah, it was great.
Those two birds, you don't have to buy a goat. Hey, thank you, guys. We're going to turn it over to the network, and be well.
Muchas gracias, amigos.
All right.
Okay.
Shalom.
Great.
And
all right.
And some other Yiddish word that slips my mind. See you later, guys.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Comfortably zoned. Adios.
All right.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.